Thank you very much, Kimberly and Hildegund, for inviting me here. Thank you, all of you, for being here and having to put up for the next 15 minutes with my broken English, but I think we're going to manage somehow. And to my wonderful co-speakers, it's an honor to speak with all of them. And I consider a little bit my act as a kind of prelude before the curtains open for the main act, or a break for commercials. Today, I'm gonna propose the term methexis, because I thought, okay, let me keep a Greek word, which I know better than anybody else in the room, which is a way of interaction, group sharing, which I will speak about to you later, and a kind of a path or a way to approaching each other as an experience. I would begin by saying something that I somehow want to learn from. I heard once in a talk in Brazil, I think Charles might know about it, and native Brazilians use it a lot, which is, it means I'm gonna speak from my place, speaking from this location, meaning that I don't know everything. I'm, yes, maybe a citizen of a planetary garden or planetary or the globe, but I know how to see the moon from the little window of my room. So I'm gonna speak from my place. And what is this? I don't know. I mean, it happens very often in our profession as a curator that we tend to think, as Western curators mostly, that we know everything about the rest of the world. We even know better about the elsewhere than our own house. But I will try first to see how I can somehow clean the mess in my room, and from there speak about the rest of the places. Now, let's say that it has been a long time since the Parisian, somehow, negrophilia of the 20s, the vogue for the Negroes, that other people can speak better about it than me. I think that it's about time that, or this kind of primitivism that comes back and back again as a kind, which is definitely a race issue. I think that it's a good idea to find out how we can replace othernization, if you allow me the word, I know it's not a good word, I'm making up words, with mutuality. If we can replace inequality with, let's say, equality, or if we can replace suspicion by difference. But let me first explain why you have this image in the screen. I don't identify exactly with this doll, but I wanted to show it as a kind of a promotion of false stereotypes and false ideas about nations and people. This is a Greek Barbie doll in what is called the national costume of Greece, which I will tell you about. And it was constructed around the 60s, and if you read, I mean, if you had time to read what, or if you can see what she says, she gives an account of her country, and she says how we move from, women are very happy, we're happy people, we like foreigners, and you go from village to village with donkeys because there are mountains, and that's the best way to approach different localities. Of course, in the 60s in Greece, the reality was much different than that. Women were there was a big mass of urbanization. People were moving from all over the villages to Athens and other cities because it was a very poor moment for Greece. Also, the donkeys were used mostly by women. I would say that they had to cultivate still the fields. And so you have these images of very older and very hardworking women with donkeys, also hardworking donkeys behind them, not as happy as this one. And we had also by the 67, the junta, the coup d'etat, and apparently there were a lot of women that they were fighting against the coup d'etat and that they've been tortured. And that gets me back to Suda about what he said to us in this wonderful talk in the morning of women being more prominent now than before. In Greece, actually, women were extremely prominent back then, but what is missing is their representation in the archives. It's amazing, but if you go, let's say, to the archive of the junta victims, you see a lot of men, and they have images of women, and they're all hidden. They just start taking them out, because also women were very, very strong in tortures. They wouldn't give out the truth very much. So they were very, very strong fighters. The woman movement was quite, revolutionary women was quite strong. The other thing I wanted to say about this image is that she wears what is called to be our national costume, but this is not our national costume. We never had a national costume. This is an invention of Queen Amalia, who ruled together with King Otto, the Bavarian king, Greece. He was the first modern king in Greece, and they ruled the country from 1832. Then they had to step down. Then they became, King Otto became the first, let's say, prime minister after the prime minister was assassinated, and he thought about Greece and how the Greek state should be. And the costume is more of what Amalia fantasized, a kind of somehow European dress, with touches of Ottoman Empire and Greek folk. And the idea on doing this kind of dressing was because they were looking very much for a kind of a unified Greek identity. They didn't like the kind of multiplicity that was that manifested itself in the Ottoman Empire and after, and also because of Greece's geographical position, there were many influences from all over, down, up, right, left, east, west, north, Balkan, whatever, so they wanted to reinvent. I mean, this was repeated later by the Enlightenment. I mean, let's not forget that Greece was supposed to be the cradle of Western civilization, and this is something that we tried hard to disprove or unlearn during the last Documenta, but through other efforts that we have been doing before, and I have been doing before through South as a State of Mind or other endeavors. Our task for today, from what I understand, is to somehow focus on key notions of translation and negotiation, and I would rather like to slightly sift these notions within our perplex context of our lives and of contemporary existence. And that's why I somehow come back to this kind of methexis proposition. I think that what is very important within this negotiation, if we call it negotiation, is also the uncountable. Something that happens in the interaction, an uncountable factor that is continuously in flux. Something that happens between you and I while we're talking that we can't define right now, but it is there. It is between us, not as a barrier, but as a kind of a unity. And it happens every time there is another person and other people and other unity. So I would take the negotiation and somehow put it more in the kind of idea of continuity as a form. And also, I prefer that if we can speak about renegotiation or redefinition, because nothing starts from the beginning. At the same time, I had this question, like, which model allows new modes of transcultural artistic exchange? But my question to this question will be, what are the new modes? What is new anyway? I would go and quote a small part of Gramsci, and I know it's not so sexy to quote Gramsci those days. He's not one of the, he's not planetary enough. I mean, he was situated in the south of Europe, and he's not feminist enough. However, he said some things that they were pretty pertinent, and at a certain point he said, created a new culture does not only mean one's individual original discoveries. It also, and most particularly, means the diffusion in a critical form of truth already discovered, their socialization as they were, and even make them the basis of a vital action to begin. So to go back to methexis, this group sharing, I just want to tell you where it starts. I mean, methi also, which means being drunk, comes from this word. So that's the uncountable, what happens when you're in another state. Methexis in the theater meant it was this kind of action that within the Greek tragedy, the audience could interact and change the plot if they didn't really like what was going on. I mean, we have to remember that Greek tragedy was a metaphor of Greek politics as well. Also, they could somehow stop the action, which means that if you're bored or if you get tired from what I say, you can interrupt me before this challenge of the 15 minutes deadline that I would be anyway interrupted abruptly because 15 minutes is 15 minutes. Now, in the philosophy, methexis means the relation between the form and the particular. As per Plato, it's very hard to somehow conceive it, but for example, I'll give you a sentence. Let's say the beauty is a particular, a beautiful object is a particular of the form of beauty. Or us, let's say, as people here in this room, we are the particular of the form of our interaction, which means our relationship and our identities and everything that has to do with our interactions is continuously changing. In search for community, while living in this time, in this world, where capitalism vigorously always promotes community, if you think about it, is the best thing. Like capitalism in a way maintains misery while somehow offers false exodus to community, be it social networks. Within this context, I'd like to also pose you a question that will be, how can we leave this predetermined space and wander beyond its boundaries in our quest for new cures, new remedies, and new affiliations? And I think that's what we are doing. That's what Suda was talking about, and that's, I guess, the quest for the planetary is, although recently I've been to a lot of planetary meetings, where I was in the planetary garden in Manifesta, and there is a lot of this kind of discussion on the planetary. And one has to be also careful because we have this tendency to somehow solve the problems that they are even more far away than when we are. Like if as West we're trying to solve the problems in the third world, and what is third world? Now that we fucked up with the Earth, we're trying to see how we can fuck up other planets as well. And excuse my friends, but I'm just saying in a way of, So we're always trying to find how to mend something else than the ground we are in. Now, speaking from my part of the world, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the South as a state of mind, and I have only 3 minutes. Damn it, so fast. And how we started thinking about this magazine. The idea, I keep referring to our mission statement, but I think it makes more resonance now than when we started even 6 years ago. The idea back then, all of a sudden back then, the differentiation between South and North Europe became apparent. So far, we are Eastern Europe, but all of a sudden we were Southern Europe. I don't know if you remember the term pigs also. Pigs was Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. It was a legitimate term that was used in parliaments, but however, it also refers to the greasy nature of Southern European. Of course, it was it was a diminutive. And that's what it was when we thought, okay, maybe this is the time that we somehow bring South in the foreground and possessed by this kind of authority, possessed as possession, like magic, we're gonna liberate South from its geographic position, the global South that is maybe I mean, it has been a great term to defend the kind of colonial history, but in the same time, it was becoming, in a way, colonial in itself, to liberate it from its geographical ground and put it as a state of mind. I mean, open it up to mind. I read recently, I was rereading the book of Rashid Darin on art beyond art, and he was saying, he says a beautiful sentence in there that says, human bodies can be enslaved, but mind can never be. So in that way, we thought that we emancipate South by opening it up to a state of mind. South was this and that. It became the magazine of Documenta. Somehow it was reconfigured and hosting on quotation, a strong institution as Documenta in a grassroots magazine. It was also a kind of a critique, an institutional critique, which mutually was agreed by the Documenta team, by artistic director Adam Simchik and myself. And now we are in the third, let's say, phase of South as a state of mind, an issue that is coming back home, let's say independent, a very difficult issue because it has to find its own economy and fauna. However, using the attention that it received through Documenta, and we decided to open for maintenance while we're trying to maintain ourselves, to maintain our energy, to maintain our sovereignty, and somehow to maintain the experience of community, the experience of continuity as a community, or the experience of community as a continuity, be it more. I was going to show you more about the magazine, but my time is over, and so I can leave it there and to the methexis, and I'm here for questions. Thank you.